Hi, I'm Kate. Welcome along. This recording is of the live webinars I've been running on how to get agency, a bit of a roadmap up and going in your classroom. The recording is from the webinars, and I just wanted you guys to all be able to access it when you can. So a little bit about me first. I'm a teacher. Most of my teaching was done in Christchurch. I very quickly realised that the traditional didn't work for me. In my first year teaching, out went the teacher desk, out went the student desk, tumbles were gone, and agency was sort of being picked up. Although I didn't know, I hadn't have a clue it was called that at the time. I think I called it self-directed learning. Anyway, it doesn't matter what you call it. I had a lot of device use going on, and even though I'm out of the classroom full-time now, I do miss it, and I do try and relieve where I can, or facilitation, I get into the classroom as much as possible. In my role in the school, I was also the digital technologies lead, so that involved moving us from having sort of one iPad and one iPod at the time in the school to getting more iPads, eventually moving into Chromebooks, moving into getting Google Apps for Education, as it was called at the time, up and running. I ran a one-to-one iPad BYOD pilot, and then we rolled BYOD out across the senior school. I also led the change into ILE type setup, so for us that happened to be quite a makeshift space. Using a couple of single cell class, we converted the library and some other spaces as well. We had 120 year 4 to 6 students, 5 teachers, and some amazing new ways of doing things, a lot of trial and error. It was really fun and exciting. So what I do now I'm out of the classroom, is I'm a PLD facilitator. That's in the space digital fluency and digital technologies. So I help schools get started with creation apps on iPad. I help with the entire Google suite for both teacher sort of admin type side of things and for student use in the class. I support schools with developing school-specific digital learning progressions, BYOD setups, implementing the digital technologies curriculum. My other huge passion is innovative learning and agency. So I help schools with the physical setup of innovative learning environments, collaborative working models, using technology to support all of that, empowering learners, and really just creating a humming environment that changes the perspective of the teacher. To help with all this, I am an Apple Professional Learning Specialist, I'm a Google certified, and I'm a Ministry of Education accredited facilitator. Sorry, too many big words there. Check out today's webinar, see what you get from it. I hope you get a lot from it, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Enjoy! A roadmap to getting started with agency in the classroom. This is a webinar that's going to support you with what sort of things you need to consider if you want to move to having more agency in your classroom. So when I talk about agency, I'm talking about a few key messages, some of which I've put through in some blog posts that you may or may not have seen. What is learner agency? How giving learners more agency can save you time as a teacher, along with my kids aren't ready for more agency, or potentially it's you that's not. So what I'm talking about is the key competencies of our curriculum. So one of those is thinking. That's where we want kids to be problem solving, actively seeking, using, creating knowledge, reflecting, questioning, challenging. Using symbols, language and text, we want them to use and interpret, recognise and respond. Our managing self key competencies, all about enterprising, being resourceful, reliable, resilient, establishing personal goals, making plans, manage projects and set high standards. The relating to others key competencies, working together to come up with new approaches, ideas, ways and thinking. And then of course having that sense of belonging and confidence as part of participating and contributing. When I talk about agency, I'm talking about developing these key competencies. I'm talking about creating active learners. Let's involve them. Let's not teach them, but let's guide them to learn for themselves. Let's help them understand what they need to learn and how they can do it. Let's empower them. I'm talking about engagement. It's crazy how even just a little choice can raise engagement a lot. Engagement leads to achievement, so let's raise the stakes. I'm also talking about everyday agency. So a lot of us know about things like passion projects, Genius Hour, and these are fantastic ways of learning. But the problem is, we can't expect kids to shine on their own when we do these passion genius projects if we aren't teaching them how to do it. If we've got a predominantly teacher-directed learning program until we say this is a project that's all yours, then it doesn't send that message that all their learning is theirs. I'm talking about the time that you'd currently use a rotation chart or a tumble to organise your learning. Right? We don't need to silo our learning by curriculum area into reading, writing, maths. The world's not like this. What I prefer to do is identify and target curriculum learning within an integrated task. So what I'm going to do as part of this webinar is I'm going to guide you on what this could look like. I won't have time to drill down into each and every step with examples and resources. However, I'll do my best. At the same time, it's no secret that I'm also putting together a digital course to support teachers even further as you embark on this journey. There is a lot of you following along with that journey, and that's awesome. And there's already some people jumped on board the course, which is super exciting for me. I'll give you a few more details on the course towards the end of the webinar. So let's get into this roadmap. So this is the roadmap I've put together. You can see in the top left-hand corner there's a bus. You as the teacher are the driver of that bus, and you have your class of learners or students on board. There's a roadblock you see in front of you, which is your mindset. That's the first part of the roadmap that we're going to work through in a minute. Once we push through that, there is phase 1 of our roadmap, circled there in yellow, phase 2 and phase 3. Now, just looking at the road itself, each phase is a roundabout. So you may go round and around and around that roundabout as much as you need to before you move to the next phase. It's not a straight approach. Okay, so first up, our bus comes across this mindset block. What I'm going to do is give you 3 questions today, which is going to help you really think about your mindset as a teacher and a few changes you might need to make if a more agency-based approach is going to work in your classroom. So first up, who is in control? So as a teacher, are you what the saying, a sage on the stage or a guide on the side? Are you a teacher at the front of the room or a facilitator sitting alongside a child? And now I'm not asking you to give up complete control. What I'm asking you to do is share that control. So it's more of a partnership in learning, right? Learning should be that partnership between the teacher and the student. Learning should come from everywhere, not necessarily the teacher. We can receive so much and learn so much free content online. So we've got to really think about what job it is of ours to teach our kids. Next question, what is learning? Is it the end product of a wonderfully attractive piece of work that's worthy of the wall, or is it what happens along the way? Learning's messy. There won't always be a product. And does there need to be? Not every task has to be accountable or measurable in some way for assessment. Last question, how do I cover the curriculum? Right. I quite often come across teachers that are struggling with how they fit everything in a day or in a week. And what I want to ask you is, should the curriculum be covered the same for all learners? Does it matter if this is not an equal split between reading, writing and maths each day? I say let's combine those curriculum areas as much as possible and get real about learning. 2 core parts of a sort of my ideal learning program, and they run at the same time. So the first part is the explicit teaching and practice of skills and concepts. So these are short, sharp, directed parts of learning. They're the parts where you see a group or you work with an individual or you set them a follow-up task to learn a specific math strategy or specific reading comprehension strategy. Then there is the application and use of these skills and concepts in a more open, longer, sort of real world application. So this is where there's a lot more choice on choosing which of these strategies to use. They're actually putting their learning into practice. So this is the freebie, give it a go freebie that I put out. If you haven't seen it, jump on my website, www.sharewithus.co.nz and grab a copy. So there's 4 tasks along the bottom. Now, those are what I'm talking about when I mention explicit teaching and practice of skills and concepts. These are short and they're sharp and they're directed tasks that practice a specific skill or concept. The bigger 4 at the top, This is where we're allowing our kids opportunity to apply those skills and concepts. They're having to choose which ones to use. They're having to choose which task to do and how they do it. So hopefully that makes sense. It's not always about splitting up our curriculum areas. Let's mix them together like we want our kids to do in real life. Right? So the whole idea with that first roadblock of mindset is to think about who you are as a teacher and how you view learning, how you view teaching and learning, whose roles are which, and how you need to cover the curriculum versus how we can integrate them. Once we move past that mindset block and you think, yep, I'm ready to give this a go, we move on to our 3 phases of our roadmap there. Now, each phase you can see has 3 different color bubbles with it. The first of those is learning needs. And the reason this is important is because how can we expect our kids to make sensible choices with their learning if they don't know what they need to learn? So what I'd suggest you do is check your data. It's highly unlikely that everybody has the same learning needs. Yet, what we traditionally do is teach an hour's reading, an hour's writing, an hour's maths, or something along those lines. But what if, like adults, we could have kids understand what their learning needs or gaps are and what tasks they could do to help themselves? What if they valued learning not because the teacher told them to do something, but because they know what impact the learning will have for them? Let's teach them this. We need to teach them this as they don't just know it. The second bubble there in each phase is the blue one, self-management. And I often have teachers say to me, oh, James struggles to manage his time, Hannah rushes to get all her tasks completed, they're not quality. Right? But we need to explicitly teach our kids how to self-manage. Take a young child, for instance. When they're a newborn, we dress them. We do everything for them because they're not capable of doing it themselves. As they get older, we might put a top on them for them or pants on and say, now you push your arms through, you can do it. Then as they get a little bit older and more capable of doing that, we'll get a garment, turn it in the right way and pass it to them. Then we might not even do that. We might just talk them through how they may be able to do it themselves. So as they get older, we give them more opportunity and raise our expectations. Right? We need to do this to teach self-management. We need to teach our learners what choices to make, when to make them, and what learning for them should and could look like. The third bubble there is the pink setup one. So that aspect is all about guiding you on how the level of choice you give may occur as you progress through. You can throw yourself and your students into the deep end. That's what the Give It a Go freebie that I put out does. And it gives you a really good idea of how I like this type of learning. Do your kids like it? Do you like it? But to get the best sort of long-term results, I do advise a sort of slow increase so that we're teaching those real core aspects along the way. Moving into phase 1. So phase 1 circled there in yellow now. With our learning needs, so our little green bubble, at phase 1, we're identifying what learning is involved in a task. All right. So quite often we can easily give our kids a task, but we don't tell them what they're learning. So we just tell them to go and do it. And as good as putting a Walter, we are learning to out there, we're not asking our kids to identify what the learning is. We're telling them what they should learn. So with this part of the phase 1, if I give you, so you won't likely be attacking a task as open as this in phase 1, but I'm going to use it as an example. And it's just the plan a class party task from the freebie resource. So I'm just going to use it as an example, and you do the same with any sort of task you do. So this task has maths involved in it. We're asking our kids to work out and record how they will spend the $80 to plan the class party. Right? We're asking them to cost that out. They've got a budget to stick to. There's maths in there. There's reading in there because we're asking them to visit these websites and where they're going to have to read information. So we want to highlight that to our kids. There's also writing. We're asking them to create an invitation. And the interesting thing would be, on their own, would your kids gather that that is writing? Or do they think writing is just writing out sentences when the writing curriculum covers a lot more than that? All right. So even if it's a simple task as you want them to complete a reading comprehension activity, highlight to them in this phase, ask them, what learning do you think is in here? All right. And get them to start forming that habit of them identifying what they may learn and then even afterwards what they have learned. The blue, the self-management part of phase 1, this time and this early on, we are only getting our kids to manage their time. So manage when they're doing tasks. Forget quality, just when they will do tasks, specifically what order they'll do them. So some questions that are going to help with encouraging this that you can use as prompts. When will I do each task? When will I need to be halfway through a task? And how long should I spend on a task? So these 3 questions are just in the very early stage of getting our kids to manage their time when they're going to do something. Not telling them when they have to have it finished, but trying to get them to realize when they might need to be moving sort of through the task a bit more. Our third aspect of phase 1, the setup. So in the setup of phase 1, you're going to be giving your learners structured tasks and only in single sessions. So what you might do, these may be as very structured and teacher directed as you have been doing. It may be independent reading for 15 minutes, right? That's absolutely fine. We're not asking our kids to manage deciding much about the task. We're just getting them to manage when they do it and identify what learning is involved. So you may set 3 tasks like this. You may have a worksheet you want them to do. And it doesn't matter if that's a reading worksheet, a maths worksheet, what it is. You might ask them to read independently, and you might give them a writing prompt and ask them to write 5 sentences about it. So in those 3 tasks you give them, you're going to identify with them the learning involved in each task. And then you're going to go a bit more explicit than that. If they say there's writing involved in the 3rd task there, how is it writing? Why is that important in learning? When might you need to use this learning in life? All right, they then need to work on the managing aspect. They then need to complete all 3. We're not asking them to manage choices yet. We're just asking them to manage time. So there's 3 tasks there. They need to complete all 3, but what order will they do them in? So your timetable may look something like this. You've got the morning block of 1 day. There's 3 spaces in there and there's 3 tasks for them to complete. Which order are they going to do them in? How long those 3 sessions are will totally depend on the age and stage of your learners. They could be 15 minutes. This all could be over in 45 minutes, or they could be 20, 40-minute blocks of time. It just depends on the task you choose and the age and stage of your learners. So phase 1, we're going to keep doing that, all right, until we're comfortable that our kids can identify the learning in a task and that they can manage their time to get 3 tasks completed. You may increase that to 4, 5, it doesn't matter. They can manage their time. All right, when we're comfortable with that, we're going to move through to phase 2. Now, phase 2, when it comes to our learning needs, so our green bubble there, we're moving past identifying the learning in tasks to now understanding the basic individual needs of each student. That's not you understanding them, that's getting them to understand them. Right? So I'm only talking as basic as their biggest learning need, reading, writing, or maths. Right? Now, we all agree they all need to be learning all of them. Yep, got that. But pick one for them. All right? Pick one and get them to understand, get them to even think it's their idea, why that one is most important for them. All right, it doesn't really matter to begin with which one it is. One is going to seem, if you look at their assessment data and things, one is most likely going to be lower. If it's not, pick one. All right. Our self-management aspect of phase 2, we're moving from phase 1, which was managing their time when they did a task, to now managing what task to do. All right, so this time it's managing their choices of what learning. So it might be questions like these that you use as a prompt with them. What tasks will I choose? Why will I choose these tasks? And am I choosing tasks that will support my learning need? Right? Just before I move on to the setup, so what we're really getting them to do in the self-management part is to really choose tasks that suit that learning need. Remember, they've spent the last little while identifying the learning in a task. Now it's to choose the task that the learning involved matches what they need to be practicing. So that's why we can go as broad as my need reading, writing, or maths. Right? All we kind of get them to do is acknowledge I pick a task because I need to learn what would be involved in that task. Right. Moving into the setup of phase 2. So in phase 1, we were having structured, simple tasks in a single session. Now we're moving to guided tasks across multiple sessions. So this is where you might use tasks like the Plan a Class Party one I was talking about, but provide more guidance in breaking it down for learners. So, for example, here's the Plan a Class Party task, and next to it on the right, I've broken it down. I've stepped them through to begin with what sort of party you'll plan. Where will it be? What will you need for the party? When will it be? What will people need to bring? What will they need to wear? Under that, there's a table to help them record how they'll spend the $80, the item, the cost of it, how many they'll need, the total, their balance. And under that, questions to help guide how they're going to create their invitation. All right, so it's no longer such an open task. It's not incredibly structured. I'm guiding them through the process of how they could complete that task, right? With the aim that we could then take that guidance away and they can make those sort of decisions for themselves. So what you'll do is you'll provide 2 tasks like that and they have to choose one of them. All right, we want to keep it very simple to begin with. If you provide 10, we're kind of overcomplicating things. So if you provide 2 of those tasks, they could be 2 from that free resource I put out, and you can create your own guided template to go along with it. To help with their moving along the self-management, they choose one of them. And what we want them to be doing is asking those questions in the blue section there and really thinking about their learning need. Why are they choosing one over the other? Your sessions would now look like this, and all you can see is we've moved from, say, just the morning block, to the morning and the middle block of one day. And in that time, they are completing one of those tasks, the task that they've chosen to do. Okay. Once we're really happy that our learners can choose a learning task that meets their particular learning need, given in mind that's really broad at the moment, we can move through to phase 3. So with phase 3 and our learning need aspect, we're moving from understand and choosing based on their need to linking their learning with their needs. So the specific learning they do with a task, linking that more direct, drilling down more into what they're actually learning rather than so broad with reading, writing, or maths. Right? You will be supporting them to articulate statements like this. My learning need is maths, so I will choose the class party task because it requires me to work out the cost of different items and to keep a budget. So the cost and the budget there are the key parts that tell us that it's maths, right? So we want them to be able to articulate like that. When I do this task, I will use the add sub strategies I've been learning. Right, so we really want them to link it through to that explicit teaching and learning that may have already occurred or may be occurring alongside this. In doing this task, I focused on my math learning need by using the add sub strategies I've been learning. So the top ones there are before doing the task, and then that's a reflection one. All right, so we really want them to now connect further into my needs maths, and these are the add sub strategies I was using. Right, that's the learning needs aspect of it. The self-management aspect of phase 3 is we're moving on from managing their choices and what learning they choose to now we're managing the quality of how they'll complete a task. And this is where a lot of people start, but how can we expect our kids to produce quality learning if they don't know what they should be learning, if they don't know what's important, right? And with that sort of self-management, if you think about, at first we managed when they're going to do stuff to what they're going to do, and now the quality. So you can kind of see how they go in that progression. They need to be able to know what to do and when to do it before we really want them to focus on the quality. Get the basics right. Okay, so it might be questions such as these ones that are going to help guide their decision making. Right, so this is all around the quality. How will I go about doing this task before they do it? So we're getting them to sort of plan out. Remember, in the last phase, you gave them kind of a guided sheet to help with it, but now we're asking them how they will go about doing it. What skills, knowledge will they need? How will they plan, organize, seek information and create? What do they need to do to complete the task? What skills will they practice? Why? And on reflection, am I happy with my learning? Is it my best? Could I improve, and how? Okay, so we're really getting them to question now how they go about doing a task, and how is that helping their learning, and how is it their best possible learning. Thinking about the setup aspect of phase 3. So we've moved from guided tasks across multiple sessions. Now we're starting to give open tasks across multiple days. So this is where you might use the Give It a Go freebie in its entirety. All right. So you've got 4 rich open-ended tasks, ideally without the guidance you gave at phase 2. But if some students need that, that's absolutely fine. From the 4, learners will choose 2 of them based on their learning needs. Now, each one of these phases is compiled on top of each other. So we still want to be saying what learning is involved in these tasks. What's your learning need? Which 2 are you going to choose because of that? They'll also complete 3 of the more practical practice explicit tasks at the bottom. Right? We're talking about a week. So you might give them this, you might talk them through it, have a bit of a brief on each of the 4 main tasks, what it involves, how it links to the curriculum. Right? Your timetable will now look something like this. All right, so you're basically Monday to Friday, morning and middle blocks are taken care of. Right? They're working their way through those 4 tasks, 2 of those 4 tasks, and then the ones at the bottom as well. Okay, so hopefully you can see how our setup is just slowly increasing as we get through. Right, now a bit of a recap. So if I just want to draw your attention back to the roadmap to begin with, so you've got your mindset, who is in control, what is learning, how do I cover the curriculum. Now remember, we've got roundabouts. So phase 1, you can stay there. Now I've been asked, how long at each of these phases, and I cannot tell you specifically what that will be for you as a teacher and for the age and stage of your learners. However, it could be 2, 3, 4 weeks. All right, if we go let's just say we say 2 weeks, we're talking about 6 weeks to get through to the end of phase 3. Now, not all your learners are going to go at the same pace. So as you go round and round that roundabout, you might come out and reflect and identify some that need to stay there. You may have some that move on, and that's absolutely fine. It's just finding the best setup for you and for your specific group of learners. So if we look at the grid, the table on that page, just as a sort of recap, as you move through each phase, the learning needs is progressing from identifying the learning in different tasks to understanding their basic learning needs as an individual, whether that's reading, writing, or maths, and then linking learning to their needs. So when they're doing a task, thinking, I'm going to use this skill or concept because it helps this learning. The self-management aspect, that progresses from managing their time when they complete different tasks, managing their choices, what tasks they choose to complete and which ones they don't, to managing the quality, how they go about completing tasks. The setup aspect is moving from structured tasks across single sessions to guided tasks across multiple sessions. So now we're talking sort of whole morning and middle block, to open tasks across multiple days. That's where we're kind of going to the whole week. Okay, it's a lot to take in. Progress slowly. The slower you go, don't go too slow. The slower you go, the more learners are going to keep going along with you. So sort of where to from here? Now, I mentioned at the start that I'm putting together a digital course to support in more detail through how to get all this set up. That course is called Ditch the Tumble and Let Learner Agency Take the Front Seat. And these are the sort of modules that are going to be involved. So there'll be a module more around the mindset, what sort of changes you may need to make. There'll be a module around learning needs. So in addition to kind of going through more of what we've covered on this webinar, how to identify those needs and how to teach learners to identify them. Question banks for each phase of the learning need aspect along the way, along with learning progressions that can be used to help identify and sort of track those needs. There'll be a self-management module in the course, which is all about will include things like tackling the learners who choose not to self-manage, those ones that really struggle with it. What can we do? Tracking task completion. I quite often get asked, how do we assess these? How do we mark them? So looking at those types of issues. Strategies and resources to support reflection. You've probably worked out as we've gone through this webinar, there's a lot of time that we're asking kids to reflect and improve, and you yourself. So strategies and resources to help with that in the classroom. And support around encouraging learners to value why they should learn. That's quite a big mindset change for them. If they're used to quite a predominantly teacher-directed environment and you ask them why they should be learning this, the answer is quite often because the teacher told me to. So really getting them to value why they should themselves, which helps with engagement, which helps with achievement. Setup module of the course will include templates to help you through the sort of different phases. It'll help with what the teacher's role is along the way. All right, so how much you teach while your students are doing this sort of setup is going to depend on quite a few factors. When you start to do that will depend on quite a few factors. So we'll cover that in the course. We'll also, there'll be a bit of an activity and task bank for you to be able to choose from different tasks like the ones on the freebie that I put out to go along with while you're doing this in the class to help with that. And then as part of the course, there'll be sort of 6 weeks of guided group support starting early in the term, starting on the 9th of February, which is sort of week by week support from me, but more so from everybody else doing the course to sort of help with things as they arise. Okay, the course is currently available for pre-sale, which is $30 cheaper than it will be, so that's at $117. That pre-sale does end on Thursday, the 17th of December. All right, the link there for it, sharewithus.co.nz/courses2. And the content for the course is available mid-January. So the idea is you think now, yep, this is me, this is what I want to do next year. Jump on there, sign up for the course, go and relax. And then mid-Jan, come back, soak up all the content, work out where you're going to start, and then we'll get into that guided support as we go. All right. Thank you so much for joining me on today's webinar. I hope you've really learnt something. I hope you've got something to think about, and I really hope to see you along on the Ditch the Tumble course. Thank you.